kind of walk you guys through the use case and a little bit of kind of history of where we started and where we are today, and then actually get you through a live working demo and the smart contract that sits behind that demo, and how we can kind of quickly do the prototyping, but then also deploy it into a live environment on a cloud. So as Deb mentioned, I've been in this blockchain space for quite a while, and oftentimes people are asking me, well, what are blockchain? I think everybody knows that, but then more specifically, what are smart contracts, right? So what are we trying to achieve? And from a brief history perspective, it's something that's actually been the concept been defined quite a while ago. In 1994, the first person that talks about smart contract was a cryptographer, Nick Szabo, and he kind of originated the idea that that contracts can be recorded as computer code, that it can be something that can create the automation between different parties and potentially remove some of the intermediaries that exist in current business workflow. Why is this important? We want to get to that independent flow that works without interruption, that can be self-executed at certain points in time, but at the same time kind of still be driven by rights, entitlements, and ownership of different parties. So that was kind of the idea that originated in 1994, and since then we've gone a long way, right? So in 2009, the first blockchain came out with Bitcoin. It's been riding high over the last couple of months and getting a lot of attraction now in the financial services space. And that was kind of the origin of the concept of blockchain. But the more important innovation related to executing smart contracts and business on top of blockchain happened in 2005. So that's only 6 years ago. That at that point in time, a new concept of a blockchain was developed on Ethereum by an entrepreneur out of Canada, Vitalik Buterin. He was the first one that actually coded a working smart contract on a blockchain. And where we are today is that we're kind of moved the concept from doing this purely on blockchain to and transactions that can happen on databases, that can happen on ledgers, that can be inside companies, outside companies, all with the basic understanding that computer code is driving the agreements that exist for the business workflow, and they are becoming what Manish also explained, the digital twin of your traditional contracts. So that's kind of a little bit of kind of the introduction here. So let's get kind of real to action, and what are we trying to achieve and code here in the next hour or so before we dive into a deeper discussion. From a use case perspective, I've been looking at commercial vehicle leasing and loans, and just came across an article 2020 that this is a market that obviously has been booming related to the pandemic and the situation we're all living in, right? Everybody's buying stuff from Amazon. There's the need for delivery trucks, and this is a market, the commercial vehicle rental and leasing market is expected to grow over at a much faster pace than current economy. Presentation mode, and I'm gonna go to a browser. I'm going to an environment which is called Project Dabble. If you're listen carefully to what Manish was explaining, Project Dabble is one of those infrastructure plays, a cloud environment that is a hosted environment that kind of easily takes in the smart contracting code and also the UI to get us to a live working application. So I've opened a new ledger on Project Dabble. Nothing is in this ledger. I need to do.
You need to share that screen where
so
you're still in your presentation.
Okay, yes, let me share. So I'm in an environment called Project Dabble, and I have created a new workspace, EF, equipment finance, and I've created a ledger EF demo. And so what I'm going to do is going to upload 2 files. I'm uploading a DAR file, right? And I'm going to deploy that. And we'll get into the details of what this DAR file specifically is, because that's the smart contracting code. And I'm going to also upload a user interface. And this is a React application that I've coded over the last 2 days. We'll let that deploy. It usually kind of takes seconds, maybe to a minute. And while we're doing that, I'm going to also define what are the users of this specific solution. So for that, I'm going to add a party, and I'm going to create an originator. I'm going to create a dealer. I'm going to create a business. I'm going to create a lessor. So those 4 parties have been added: business, dealer, lessor, originator. They all been identified with a specific ledger ID, which you can see over here, and also have a specific user authorization JWT token, so a token that allows you to log in. So I'm going to download kind of all of these users. They're coming in right here. And
yeah, so going by a chess analogy then, so but you've set up the rules of the chess now in your demo model, and the state of the chessboard, which piece is where, is going to be stored on this cloud website, the projectdabble.com, and now we are allowing the players to log in. So these are the authentication tokens.
Okay. So here's the information of the different parties. So a business, dealer, lessor, and originator. And I'm going to capture kind of the token of the originator. And my cloud deployment should have been established already. So let's go over here. There's a domain and a website. And I'm going to log in as originator. Put in the security token. And now I'm in kind of a live working app where I'm going to initiate the 4 smart contracts that I explained in my initial intro. So I'm going to create a new asset. For that, I need the originator, and I'm going to bring that up again. Let me share this a little bit bigger. Originator. So I take on the party ID. I need a business. So
yeah, and when you so just a note to everybody who's watching. So obviously, when you go to production or when you're deploying an actual application, you won't have to do all of this because this is already coded. You'll probably be just selecting who you are, and the system will take care of all of these party IDs and tokens and all that stuff.
I'm going to select, what type of transaction, retail transaction I want to do. I want to do a loan. What is my contract date? Kind of make that today. Duration. It's a 3-year contract. The amount is for $25,000. The rate is going to be 8%. This is for a van. We're going to put in a van VIN number. The business score is 600. And since we're kind of deal with a commission for the dealer, we'll put in $500. And when I click OK, in just a few seconds, we see our first smart contract has been created. Smart contract has a 64-digit alphanumeric code. I've simplified it here to the first 6 or 8 characters, so it doesn't kind of take all of the retail space of this user interface. But between an originator, a business, and then all of the information that is been established. So same thing can happen on the wholesale side. So let me create a wholesale contract. Here, I need, again, the originator. And so let me bring up that view again. So originator is right here. We're going to add a dealer, and the dealer ID is right here. They're going to do a loan. We'll do a start date of today. Target end date is a little bit uncertain, but let's make it April 1st. Term of the lease or loan can be again specified here. I put in a year, the amount, 18,000, a rate. It's commercial rate, a little bit higher, maybe 9%. It's for a van. It's a VIN number. Just put in some random numbers here. And we're going to say this is a funded transaction. Okay. And so now that wholesale contract has been created. Okay. So I have a retail contract and a wholesale contract by the originator. If I go in and now go into log in with the dealer, then bring back the password of the dealer here. You don't see any retail contract because the dealer will not be authorized to look at a retail contract, but the dealer has view of the wholesale contract. So here's one of these examples of where we have specific entitlements enforced based on who can access certain contracts, smart contracts in a way. So let me get back to the originator and showcase you. So toggling back and forth between these tokens here. So originator, okay. And on this retail contract, we're now going to ask for a funding request. So for a funding request, we're going to reach that out, make that available to a certain lessor. And so let's identify what the ID is of the lessor. So the lessor ID is right here. No, that's the wrong one. Funding request.
Do you want to pick volunteers, Bart, or?
Yeah, in just a minute. We're gonna add a fee.
Okay.
That's a recommended origination fee. I'm gonna just type in here the shortcut of the contract, EAE9. And at that point in time, a funding request contract has been created. So now this is a contract that's been created for lessors to take a look at. If I click approve, nothing will happen because I'm not entitled to approve a funding request. Only a lessor will be able to do so. So the last kind of transaction here is then to log in as a lessor and provide you with that particular transaction. So a lessor entitlement token is right here. Okay. And when the lessor clicks on approval, they're going to add a funding date, which can be today. We'll put in the lessor ID. So let me pick that from here real quickly. A funding ID and then I'll put the shortcut here for the request contract. I'll just type it in here, C49, and click OK. Okay, and now the funding has been approved. So this is now a new contract for funding approval between the lessor and the originator for a retail transaction that was $25,000. That was a loan for a van at an interest rate of 8%. Right. So now I have created an workflow of smart contracts between an originator, a business van owner, and also the lessors. So before I'm going to let this application go make it available to everybody, I want to show you one more thing kind of on the backside of this platform. I'm going to be able to look at all of the different contracts from each of the different participants. An originator created a retail contract. They created a wholesale contract. They created a contract request, which contains the retail contract. So here's the information of the retail contract. And then they also are part of the contract approval. And here they will be able to see what has been agreed upon by the lessor on the execution of that contract. If I look at the business, they just have access to a retail contract. The dealer just has access to a wholesale contract, and the lessor has access to the request and the approval. So that's kind of the backend verification of all of the smart contracts and all of the details of these transaction flow between an originator, a business, a dealer, and a lessor. So since this is a live environment, now over the next few minutes, I'm going to make it available to everybody. So the way to do that is to go to the following link. I'll put it in the chat. So over here. And more chat. Link for live demo. Okay. And then obviously to, be able to log in under the rights entitlements, you can log in with the short names of what is displayed over here, but you will need to enter the security token with each of those participants. So I'm going to grab this file and also make it available in the chat. And the chat is right here.
But your URL didn't come through on the chat. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong window.
Everyone.
You sent it to me only.
Yeah. So here's the link of the URL. So let's get back. All right, so if you open up your chat,
So the URL for Project Dabble, does it need to have like the HTTPS and such? Because it came over with just a piece of it.
Yeah, so actually, let me get it with the HTTPS.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Hold on, I will remove the last spaces here. There we go.
Okay, that works.
Okay. All right. So while I'm ready for a couple of questions if people have.
There are a few actually.
Then people can go in and look at these contracts, and I'm going to log in as an originator, and we should be able to see live new contracts being generated.
So what you want people to do is hit that last link that you sent
Yep.
in the chat, and that'll open up this application in your browser that you just deployed. And then what do you want them to do?
And then they can go in each of those different, under each of those different parties. So either as an originator, as a business, as a dealer, or as a lessor, and start transacting in the system. As long as you're identifying, the login allows for the short name, so originator, and then the token. So let me pick the token here of the originator.
So maybe if we have some people that want to volunteer, we could just send them the tokens, because in the chat only the business party token is showing up because the tokens are so long.
Okay, all right. So I didn't realize that was going to be cut off. So let me send them individually.
But if you want to send me the file,
okay,
for who wants to play which role, and I can send the tokens.
All right, so let me
awesome.
Let me send you the file, and then people can kind of connect with you on the tokens. So I will.
So people can decide what role they want to play.
Exactly.
And then Manish will provide the token.
Okay. Manish, sending you the file.
Yeah.
And the token. Users. Download parties.
Andrew and Greg, I think you guys are already, which roles do you want to play? You can mention in the chat, and then I'll send you the tokens for that party and the party ID for that token.
Okay. Manish, you should have all of the tokens, and then share them with people interested in participating. And we'll just stay on kind of the project and see if new contracts are coming in. Deb, you mentioned there's a couple of questions, so maybe I'll take a few questions, and then we'll get into kind of what's the back-end code of this.
Yeah, we had a question from Jake. He had to step out to deal with an emergency, but it'll be caught on the recording for him. So this data could all be API'd, is that correct? And the contract generation.
Yeah, absolutely. So this platform allows for a user interface, but everything can be accomplished through an API layer. And with the right entitlements, acting as an originator or lessor, you can send this information through an API directly into the system. And it will enforce all of the rules that the smart contracts have been coded against.
And then there was another question. So what are you running as a ledger for this?
Okay.
Where are those tokens coming from?
Yeah, so this is a hosted Project Dabble environment, a cloud-enabled environment made available by the team from Digital Asset. And their underlying ledger is a database, right? So thinking about what Manish is saying, there's multiple deployment capabilities. This is one of them, one of the 8 or 9 or 10 different ledger types that they're supporting. And underneath this particular one is a database. But there are other options. There could be a Hyperledger Fabric, there could be R3 Corda, there could be an Amazon database. From a coding perspective, smart contracting perspective, a user interface perspective, that all stays the same. The infrastructure can be easily swapped out between one or the other.
So Bart, I've got Andrew, who is the originator. Jill is the dealer, and Greg has been assigned as the lessor. Do you have to do anything to, or can they log in and see?
Yeah, they should be able to log in.
Okay.
They also should capture kind of, if they're originator, they need to capture the ledger IDs, right, for the originator in the business, and then also the ledger IDs. So you might want to send them those particular IDs as well.
Yeah, I'm sending them everything in the JSON file, actually. The ledger ID, party name, and the token.
Yeah. Okay.
Is anybody else playing a role? I'm attempting to log in as business, but I might have grabbed the token wrong. So
here we see already a new contract that was been created. So it's a lease for 3 years for a van and a commission of 50. And so that's kind of already going through this. And so the originator, if you click on funding request, then we should see that coming up here. As well.
James is now going to be trying to log in as the business.
Okay. And so when James kind of logs in, he will have a limited view because he won't see any of these wholesale contracts. He won't see any of the funding requests, but he will be able to see the specifics of these retail contracts.
And I think that also demonstrates the disclosure property of smart contracts, especially Daniel, because as you can see, Bart can easily control which user can see what information. So the developers and the business doesn't have to worry about whether access rights, authorization checks. It makes compliance also pretty easy, and security obviously much better.
Okay, and obviously, a new contract shows up here, which is for a tractor with specific VIN and a commission. And again, it's done by this one originator. If I go into Project Dabble, now I can create more users if I want to. I can create an originator too.
So what's the next step on that contract that just came in, Bart?
Okay, so the next step on this contract is to let me get back to
who should act on it.
The originator can click the funding request, and that will bring up kind of the need for a lessor to be added to the ledger party. They can add a fee, and they can then manually enter kind of the original funding contract, which is the shortcut here, these 6, 7, 8 characters. But you can, for demo purposes, you can put anything in there if you want to. All right. So let me kind of do this action here to demonstrate it. So I click on funding request. I'm just going to put in E8. And then the lessor, which I have over here in my list. I'm going to put in what would be an origination fee, maybe $250. Click OK. And then the funding request has been made for the $250 origination fee for that contract, and can send it to an approval. Okay, so that's how kind of the simple workflow of an interaction between an originator and a lessor, a business, and a dealer can happen. Simplified in 4 different smart contracts that are all interlinked. So going back at the live data, now we see a number of different contracts showing up here for the originator, and there's still kind of the 1 contract as a dealer and the 2 contracts or 3 contracts for a business. So if we go to the business side of things.
So Bart,
Yeah.
James is trying to log in as business and it says the username is invalid. Why would that be?
So
Then see.
well, that would mean that the token is not correct. So we'd have to kind of check that the token has not been entered with that just an alphanumeric version of the information is being entered.
Yeah, I think he said he tried it with no quotes and with quotes.
Yeah, it needs to be no quote.
Could there be like a multi-user problem here? One person is already logged in, the other person.
Oh, that could be this. Yeah, that could be an issue if the same user has been.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the screen and I didn't do anything, so I wonder if I was holding up the program here.
Yeah, so we might. There might be a multi-tenancy issue of multiple people trying to access with the same.
I'm out now if you want to try again.
But we can see here now for the lesser 2 funding requests and 3 funding requests and 1 approval. Coming in. Okay, so 3 funding requests and 1 approval at this point in time. So this is a live environment, so people can continue to play around with it. In the interest of time, I just want to show you a little bit of how do we get here. What is now the smart contract that drives all of this? And for that, I'm going to showcase to a developer environment. But I'm gonna keep it light. I'm going to try to do this entire smart contract in about 15 minutes. And in order to do that, I'm going to use the demo toolset that's available. And so demo. So what I do to start smart contracts here.
Can we just check the visuals real quick? Can everybody see this all right?
Yeah. Let me move this a little bit.
So we are seeing 2 VS Code windows, but one in the background and one console that you're typing at the VS Code window.
I'm trying to move this a little bit down because I'll create a new one.
Okay, stuff's getting real here.
It sits behind the zoom thing is always can't move it.
Oh, yeah, you got to move the zoom bar.
Yeah, the zoom bar. There we go. Okay, so
we can see a VS Code window as well with the code in it. Okay, that's gone.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So see the documents. So go to my directory. And in order to start a project, I'm going to initiate this command. I'm going to do a new contract, or new project, create YAML app. And that now has been created. So if I look at my directory, okay, and if I show it in here in documents, all right, it's created basically a structure of everything you need to build an application with, you know, a standard UI, and it already has a standard demo in place. So I'm going to go to my developer environment, and I should see here. I'm gonna open up a folder. Okay, and under the demo folder, I see here an user.demo. I'm going to delete everything, and then kind of create a new version of this. So let me open up a new window so I can see it side by side.
So Manish, what sort of coding or technical experience is required for a business team to take advantage of this?
So I think so this is definitely, I mean, it's easier development, but it's still development nevertheless. However, it'll be useful if this is not, you know, core, you know, we don't need a hardcore programmer for this. Someone who's got a business background, who understands the business process is an ideal candidate. You know, anybody who's like a techno-functional person is the best. And as you'll see, as Bart writes out the workflow, you'll see that that techno-functional person who's actually writing the demo code, it's really easy for a business person who's a non-programmer, non-technical, for them to understand as well. So it's a very nice collaborative process where the operations and the business people can interact live with the techno-functional programmer who's writing the demo, and you know, and accelerate the whole process. So it's very easy.
Bart, are you able to increase the size of the
Yep.
text in your screen? Thank you.
Okay, I'll increase this size.
There we go.
There we go. All right, so I'm going to create basically now this first contract, and I'm going to define what are the data elements. So I'm going to need an originator, which I define as a party. So that allows you to identify, you know, the people that are participating into this contract. It's going to have the business. It's going to have an equipment finance type, start date, duration, amount, rate, asset type, VIN, the business credit score, and a commission. So some of them are text, some are decimals, some of them are defined as its own data type. So what this means is that, you know, I can add those particular data types in the code here. So I'm putting them outside of the template, and basically as an EFT type, you know, you can define it a lease alone. As an asset type, it could be a van, a tractor, a trailer. You know, it could be it could be a snowmobile. Any type of kind of specific asset or equipment finance type can be easily determined by these data types. And then the second, the critical component here to drive, who can do what, the entitlements part is defined by kind of the next code, two lines of code. And that's where we define who's a signatory and who's an observer. So in this case, it's an originator and a business. So what this really means is that who can create the EF contract. The only party that's identified as an originator can create that contract, and who can see the contract is the business. So that's why when somebody logs in as business, they can see the EF contracts, but they won't be able to see the other type of contracts. And then the next couple of lines of codes that I'm going to add here is the action. Paste. Copy. And here I'm going to define a controller, who's a person that can take an action. In this case, it's the originator. They can create an EF contract, and they can create an EF contract, which is going to result into the contract with all of the data elements that have been defined above. And the simple action is do create this. All right, so this is the action that basically creates that whole EF contract by the originator. And that was that button that we're seeing over here, create new assets, and you see more contracts are coming in, and the data elements that are associated with this. Okay. And then the second action we want to execute here is a little bit more extensive code. Again, the controller originator can create a funding request, right? And that's going to create a contract ID funding request. And for that, they're going to add a few new elements. They're going to add who's the lessor as a party, what is the fee, and they're also adding the original contract ID that they want to be part of that funding request. And then the next set of lines of code is going to create that funding contract request. Well, we don't have that yet defined, so let me define that first. So we need a template. Funding contract request with, and we're going to kind of add all of the data elements.
Almost like watching a cooking show, but way nerdier.
Okay, so and so in this particular case, we've defined now the contract funding request, which can add the lesser party to the request. It's going to add the origination fee. It's going to embed all of the elements of the original EF contract, and we'll add also contract, for references, that contract ID. Okay, and from there on, we need to get to the approval. So I'm going to create a new template, funding contract approval. And for that, we're going to add a set of new data elements. We'll have the lessor, a funding date, the original request, the funding contract request. We'll add the ID, and we're also adding a funding status. So funding status is not yet defined, so I'm gonna have to add it here at the top. And we'll add that here. And it's either open or funded. Okay. And when we're doing the funding request, now we'll add another choice here that that allows to create this funding request. And so funding contract. So okay. What I've not done yet is define the signatories and the observers. So let me add that here. So for the funding request, the signatory is the originator and the observer is the lessor. And then in the case of the funding contract approver, the signatory is the lessor. Okay. I'm gonna do a little bit indentation here. Okay. Get all the get it lined up nicely. And so the last part we need to do is funding control approver. That actually
71 they should be aware, I think, before the signature.
Where, yeah. Okay, funding contract request, the action. Funding contract requests. Let me zoom out a little bit so I can kind of see where I'm at. Funding acting requests, funding request. Okay, so I still need to add the action here to go from funding contract request to funding contract approval.
Yeah, and if I think most people on the call may be familiar with what are the swim lane diagrams, like a process flow that is created in multiple swim lanes. If you have a swim lane diagram like this, then the creation of the Dynamo program is actually much simpler. It happens within a couple of hours. All you have to do is type out the stuff, because it very closely mirrors a business process. As you can see, there's no overtly technical stuff here. It just who's the controller, who's the signatory, what choices, what rights do they have, and then what are the parameters of that right.
Okay. So here I'm close to 90 lines of code to define the entire smart contract. I still need to add the wholesale contract here. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of show you kind of the end result here, which contains the wholesale contract with some additional logic on how to close it. The finance contract over here, then the funding contract over here, and the funding approval contract over here. So 128 lines of code, kind of established, kind of all of the smart contract logic for the entire application. There's nothing more than this. It's just a matter of compiling all of the information and deploying it onto a solution like Project Dabble. If you want to get fancy and deploy it on other type of ledgers, you certainly can do. It's going to probably take a little bit longer, but all of that is all there is to that application that we demonstrated earlier. There is kind of the user interface related to that, but that also uses standard frameworks like React or Angular that already come kind of as templates, so can easily be modified. And this entire application, as coded here, from a smart contract perspective to the user interface, was done in 2 days or less, right? So think about the possibilities of creating smart contracts and actually showing to kind of your innovation team, showing to your leadership team, saying, here's a business process that we have internally that we've now completely digitized, with rights and entitlements, with variable data elements that we can define based on our business, with a logic that we can kind of identify based on choices and ledger actions, and get to a fully working prototype that's accessible by everybody, right? So people have been transacting on this model here now for a few minutes, and I see more of them coming in as well. So that's kind of the big innovation and the moonshot idea that Manish and I wanted to bring forward to this group, showcasing that it doesn't take 4 weeks to build a smart contract. It doesn't take 8 weeks to build a prototype. In a matter of 2 days with a very simplified workflow. And yes, things can be improved to make it more user friendly, so we don't have these fancy long ledger IDs. But this is all part of kind of the entitlements and the rights framework that showcase that it actually works. And so wanted to kind of take a quick pause here and see if there's any further questions.
Yeah, we do have questions coming in the chat. Greg, do you want to ask your question? Just go off mute.
There we go. I got too many windows open. Yeah, so there's a lot of data that's stored in here in these smart contracts. As if I was a lessor, would I be able to summarize all of this? And I see that there's an answer that yes, you can. Because as a business, right, big data is everything, and I want to be able to take all this information, aggregate it, and perform analytics on it.
Yeah. So here's the lessor approval smart contract. So it has the trail of the funding request, right? So it has its, first of all, it has its own contract ID, right? It's right here. It has the funding request, right? That kind of was the step before we get to the approval. And so in here you can see all the information that was entered during the funding request, and then it contains kind of the actual underlying contract right here, and all of that is available here to view. But then there's integration points. If you kind of go a little bit further over here, that allows you to define APIs and actually hit all of that information through a traditional API framework, that you can kind of download all of these contracts and the contract information into a traditional JSON format that then can be used for analytics purposes.
Yeah, and in fact, Greg, that's one of the use cases, one of a very important use cases that Daml is being used for now. Traditionally, I think, as you rightly pointed out, you take the data from multiple sources, then you put them on a staging layer. The database programs that do all of that data extraction, etc., are called ETL tools, if you're aware of that. all of those data extraction tools run. They'll extract the data from different systems, put it on a common staging database, and then another program will run which will actually make sure the data is consistent, your applications are not outdated, your customer IDs are correct, etc. And then finally that data goes over to a tool where you can finally start to do some analytics or regression analysis. If you think of the entire process, about 60 to 70% of your total analytics effort that you're putting into your data management goes into those first two stages, collecting all the data in one place, cleaning the data and making sure it is consistent. And the remaining 30% is being used to actually do your analytics. So what people are now experimenting with is how can we use DAML or another tool like this within a company so we can connect all of our different applications and all of the required data can be in one place already without us having to run all those extra processes. So I think that's a very good point.
We have another question from Jake. Is this being actively beta tested?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Manish. Yeah, you're.
Yeah, I think so. This is already production grade. There are several large enterprises which are already using it for production programs. So I think this is beyond the beta testing.
Yeah, and it's already happening in equipment finance. I was just on a call with a technology executive in equipment finance yesterday who was showing me the use cases that they're doing. He wanted to be at this session today, but they're actively looking into using DAML to streamline in equipment finance for capital markets use cases and others.
Yeah. The original kind of initial users were capital markets firms, right? So Manish, you have existing customers like the Australian Stock Exchange and work with banks like HSBC. I've leveraged this platform at the other end of the spectrum. So it is also being used by startups in a variety of industries. So I'm using it for working with a startup in the mortgage industry and two in the healthcare industry because it brings that additional layer of security to and defining rights and entitlements. And then, as we demonstrated over here, we can bring up a working live prototype in just a matter of days, right? So it shortcuts that entire innovation cycle for those type of companies as well that don't have as much funding to do 3 months or 6 months of prototyping. They want to get something up and running in a matter of of days or maybe a week or two.
Yeah, and Manish and I were chatting about this in the chat. I was asking, how long did it used to take, and he said that clients are saying the productivity gains for getting to prototypes is in the range of 6 to 10 times faster.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that, right? So in my days I was working at IBM, standard MVP would be 3 months, and so now I'm cutting that to a simple version into a couple of weeks, a more extended version into 6 to 8 weeks. So that's and the DAML component is extremely fast to program. Where we end up still spending more time on is user interface design and working out some of the workflow. So the design aspect is is still going to be part of your overall timeline, but from a back-end perspective, creating smart contracts, 100 lines of code gave you a working application between a business, an originator, a lessor, and a dealer.
Yeah, this is pretty game changing for accelerating new possibilities.